Are we doing okay on the border, folks? Not going to have it. You got to come into our country illegally. You're right. We're not letting people into our country unless they come in legally, and we want people to come in through merit.
There was the message. President Trump sending a message to the migrant caravan yesterday. He was on the stump in Mississippi. This is from the border now. The Department of Homeland Security says 8,500 migrants have made it to Tijuana. We've got National Border Patrol Council President Brandon Judd on that in a moment. But first, live to the border, and Griff Jenkins in Tijuana. What's happening today, Griff? Good morning.
Hey, Bill, well, the sun's just coming up here in Tijuana, and let me let you take a look at the sports center here. This is a Benito Juarez Sports Stadium that has the largest number of migrants of those 8,500 that Secretary Nielsen was telling us about. About 6,000, we believe, are in this actual stadium. In fact, we went inside a little earlier when people were sleeping to give you a look at just how tight these tents inside here are packed. The conditions are rough. We spoke to one of the migrants who had come out in the night, walking around a little bit. He told me that food is getting a little scarce, water's getting scarce, and some people have been here for a week or longer. One of the interesting details we got from Secretary Nielsen yesterday in that statement was that they believe there's as many as 600 people with criminal history, and they also note, as I have observed so far this morning, a large majority of the folks that I am seeing here are like these guys right here. They're mostly male. You're not seeing the same number of women and children and families that we saw when I was with this caravan much in its earlier stages. We talked also, as you see and look around, there are houses here. There are Tijuanans that live here. We asked a gentleman going to work, I said, what do you think about this? He said, well, my heart goes out to them because they need help, but I don't want them here anymore. The U.S. and Mexico needs to get their act together politically and figure out something to do with these people. But for these folks inside here, this is the end of the road for them. And as we saw from that situation on Sunday, obviously the level of intensity has only risen here, and the Border Patrol officials on the other side clearly not going to tolerate another attempt like we saw on Sunday. We've learned Mexican officials say they deported about 98 of those folks arrested on this side of the border. Some 500 may have been identified. We'll find out what happens. A final note, Bill, I'll leave you with, and that is Pueblos Sin Fronteras, the largest organizing group assisting these people, has just put out a statement in the last hour where they basically are calling on the humanitarian organizations within Mexico to provide some shelter and protection for these migrants because they feel that they are at a higher risk now that the situation is elevated. Bill?
You can understand that. Thank you, Griff. Griff Jenkins, good reporting down there. Sandra's got some more now.
For more on all of this, let's bring in Brandon Judd, president of the National Border Patrol Council. Brandon, thank you for coming on the program this morning. Obviously, first up, we'd ask you for an update on the situation at the border. What can you tell us this morning?
Well, I'm grateful for the actions that our agents took. The way that they did it was very professional. The way they handled a very, very tough situation with hundreds of people rushing directly at them, throwing projectiles at them. They tried to de-escalate the situation through verbal commands. It didn't work to the point that they finally had to deploy tear gas to disperse the crowd. And they did it, you know, again, not just for their safety only, but for the safety of the people that were in the crowd, that were being pushed to the front, that were being forced to do things that they didn't want to do. So I commend the agents. You know, I'm an agent myself. I put on a uniform, but I commend them for doing what they did. They did it very well, and they did it very professionally.
And I know that you are saying that those agents got control of a very dangerous situation, is what you have called it. You're obviously defending the use of that tear gas. What do you say to critics who are responding to the images of women and children that were making their way to the border, some of them barefoot? How do you respond to those who say this was a use of force that may not have been necessary?
It absolutely was necessary. When you have grown males that are pushing women and children up to the front and using them to be able to throw their projectiles, they gave us absolutely no choice. And you have to look at, you have to take in the totality of the situation, look at where we lobbed the tear gas. We did not lob the tear gas at the women and children. We lobbed it away from the group to where it would be able to disperse to allow the women and children to get away. It was done very professionally, and it was done very well, and there were absolutely no injuries.
Some of the latest that we are learning about the makeup of this caravan. 8,500 members of the caravan officially in Tijuana. They're mostly male, and about 90% of them would not qualify for asylum. Is that all accurate? And what more can you tell us about the makeup of this caravan?
It is accurate, and what's happening is they're gaming the system. They're thumbing the nose at they're thumbing their nose at the American public, the American government. They're going to cross the border illegally. They're not going to try to do it properly. If they were, they would present themselves at port of entries. They would not rush the border. But unfortunately, we have a history of dealing with these caravans, and the vast majority of them, their first act upon coming to the United States is an illegal act, and that sets the tone right there. And that just cannot be tolerated, and it can't happen. And
that continues to be the message from Kirstjen Nielsen, the Secretary of Homeland Security. She says the overwhelming majority of these individuals are not eligible for asylum in the U.S. under our laws. Historically, less than 10% of those who claim asylum from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador are found eligible by a federal judge. Here's what the president had to say last night, and we knew we were going to hear from him. Here's what he said.
I do say, why are they there? I mean, I have to start off. First of all, the tear gas is a very minor form of the tear gas itself. It's very safe. But you really say, why is a parent running up into an area where they know the tear gas is forming and it's going to be formed, and they're running up with a child? You know, if you change the laws, you wouldn't be having this problem. And I think the funding of the wall right now is never looked better.
How does this play out for the president ginning support for his funding of the border wall?
Oh, I think this is really good because a picture's worth 1,000 words. And when the American public sees that these individuals are not following our laws, but in fact they're rushing our border, what it does is it galvanizes the public, and it lets them know the situation that we're under, the situation that Border Patrol agents face. The president hit some very, very key points. One, Congress has to act. Two, they need to fund the wall so that we can build walls in strategic locations so that we don't have to face this situation, and we can control the crossing points where it takes place. You know, he hit all the right points. He also talked about the tear gas. That tear gas has been certified as safe for all individuals, including children. And again, we do have to be careful with children, but it has been determined safe. And again, I will point out there were absolutely no injuries in this incident.
Brandon, that being said, this is not over, nowhere near. As this showdown continues, what more support are you going to be asking for at the border? What is needed as far as troops? Will more be heading that way?
I don't think that we're going to be getting any more troops, nor do I think that we need any more troops. The troops have been great as far as being our eyes, being our ears, watching out and looking what's happening and being able to deploy our agents to the right places. They're an absolute necessity for us, and I'm grateful that the president has deployed the troops, as have past presidents in the past. But this president has taken it further as far as giving us more resources on the border, and to our agents, that amounts to everything.
Brandon, finally, and we're going to have to leave it here, but if you could, you hear the frustration in your voice. You're so close to this, and we're all trying to get more information about what is happening there. If you could just leave us off with what you see as the most misunderstood point about what is happening there right now.
Well, I think the media, the mainstream media, is not being honest with the American public in the situation that we face. These individuals are trying to game the system. They're putting us in these situations, and then the mainstream media is vilifying our agents. That's wrong, and it needs to stop.
Brandon Judd, National Border Patrol Counsel, thank you for coming on the program this morning.
Thank you.